"You are now my slave," said the Comanche king, but one warrior risked everything to save her. The journey across the wide plains had lasted many weeks, and every sunrise felt heavier than the one before. The caravan moved slowly through dry grasslands where the wind never seemed to rest. Wagons creaked, horses snorted, and dust followed them like a shadow. Among the travelers was a young woman named Eliza. She had joined the caravan with hope, believing the journey would bring her to a safer life and new beginnings. She had left behind a small town filled with memories she did not wish to carry anymore. Like many others traveling with her, she believed that the open land offered both danger and opportunity.
Eliza was not loud or demanding.
She spent most of her time observing the world around her. She watched how the older settlers handled the horses, and how children played even when tired. She noticed how fear slowly grew among the group as supplies ran low, and the nights became colder. The leader of the caravan tried to remain confident, but whispers spread among the travelers that they were entering territory controlled by powerful Comanche riders. Some travelers became nervous whenever distant movement appeared on the horizon. Sometimes it was only animals, but other times riders could be seen far away, watching without coming closer. These sightings made everyone uneasy. At night, the fires burned brighter, and guards took turns watching the darkness. Eliza often sat quietly near the edge of the camp, listening to the wind and wondering whether she had made the right decision to leave her old life behind. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills and painted the sky with deep orange light, the caravan stopped near a narrow river. The travelers believed it was a good place to rest and refill water supplies. The atmosphere felt calm at first. Some people laughed around the fire, trying to forget their fears. Eliza helped prepare a simple meal, speaking softly with a woman who had lost her husband during the journey. There was a sense of fragile peace, as if everyone wanted to believe they were safe. The peace did not last long. The sound of horses arrived suddenly, like thunder rolling across the ground. Riders appeared from different directions, moving quickly and confidently. Within moments, the caravan was surrounded. Panic spread, but the travelers had little chance to resist. The riders were skilled and organized, their movements precise and controlled. At their center rode a powerful figure, a man whose presence commanded attention without needing to speak loudly. The Comanche king observed the captives carefully. His expression was calm but firm, showing neither cruelty nor softness. He seemed to measure each person with thoughtful eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice carried authority. Through gestures and translated words, the captives understood they were now under his control and would be taken to the tribe's camp. Fear filled Eliza's chest, but she refused to show panic. She stood quietly, watching everything with careful attention. She knew that sudden resistance would only make things worse. As the captives were guided away from their wagons, she glanced back at the life she had been traveling toward. It felt distant already, like a dream fading at sunrise. The journey to the camp took hours. The riders moved steadily, ensuring no one fell behind. Some captives cried quietly, while others remained silent. Eliza walked with measured steps, focusing on staying calm. She noticed that the warriors did not treat the captives with unnecessary harshness, but they made it clear that escape was impossible. When they reached the camp, Eliza was surprised by what she saw. It was not a place of chaos or constant violence as she had imagined. Families gathered around fires, children played nearby, and elders spoke in low voices. Life continued here in ways both unfamiliar and deeply human. The camp felt alive, filled with stories she did not yet understand. The king gave instructions to divide the captives according to tribal customs. His decisions were swift and unquestioned. When Eliza was brought before him, he studied her quietly. The translator explained that she would serve under his authority, helping with tasks needed by the camp. His words were firm, leaving no room for argument. Though the situation frightened her, she sensed that showing calm respect might help her survive. As she was led away, she felt many eyes watching her. Some faces showed curiosity, others caution. She kept her gaze steady, refusing to show weakness even though her heart beat fast. She realized that survival here would depend on learning quickly and understanding the people around her. Among those watching was a warrior who stood slightly apart from the others. His posture was strong, but his eyes carried something different, a quiet thoughtfulness that set him apart. He did not speak to her, yet she felt his gaze linger longer than the rest. His presence felt steady, almost protective, though she could not explain why. The first days in the camp were difficult. Eliza was given simple tasks such as gathering water and helping prepare food. She struggled at first, unsure of customs and language, but she observed carefully. She noticed how respect was shown through actions rather than words, how cooperation kept the camp functioning. Slowly, she began to understand small details, when to speak, when to remain silent, and how to show gratitude. Though fear remained, curiosity grew within her. She saw moments of kindness that challenged her expectations. A young child offered her a piece of bread one morning. An older woman corrected her gently when she made a mistake rather than reacting with anger. These moments reminded her that people were more complex than stories told from afar. The warrior who had watched her earlier often appeared nearby during her tasks. He never approached directly, but he seemed to ensure she was not placed in danger. Once, when another captive struggled with heavy supplies, he silently adjusted the load to make it easier.
Eliza noticed these actions and wondered about his thoughts.
Nights in the camp were the hardest. As the fires dimmed, memories returned. Her old home, the long journey, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. She wondered whether she would ever regain freedom, or whether this new life would define her future. Still, she refused to give up hope. Each day she learned something new, and each small success gave her strength. Meanwhile, tension grew among the warriors. As scouts brought news of movement across the plains, rumors spread of soldiers traveling nearby. The king held quiet meetings with trusted fighters, preparing for possible conflict. The atmosphere in the camp shifted, becoming more serious and watchful. Eliza sensed the change even without understanding the details. Conversations became shorter and tasks were completed more quickly. She realized that whatever happened next could shape her fate completely. One evening, as she finished carrying water back to the fire, the silent warrior finally spoke to her. His words were few and careful, translated through simple gestures and shared understanding. He warned her to remain close to the camp and avoid wandering alone. His tone was not commanding but concerned. That brief conversation stayed with her long after he walked away. For the first time since her capture, she felt that someone saw her not only as a captive, but as a person worth protecting. As darkness fell, she sat near the fire, staring into the flames. She knew her life had changed forever, yet she also felt a strange sense of resilience growing within her. She had survived the journey, the capture, and the first days in a world she had once feared. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage. Across the camp, the warrior watched quietly, his thoughts heavy. Loyalty to his king had guided his life for many years, but something about this situation stirred doubt within him. He sensed that difficult choices were approaching, choices that might force him to risk everything he believed in. The wind moved through the camp, carrying whispers of uncertainty and change. Eliza looked up at the sky, searching for strength in the stars. Though she did not know it yet, the path ahead would test both her courage and the warrior's loyalty, binding their fates together in ways neither could imagine. The days that followed were filled with routine and careful observation. Eliza learned quickly that survival in the camp required patience, attention, and respect for traditions that were unfamiliar to her. Each morning began before sunrise, the camp stirring to life with the low sounds of conversation, the clatter of pots, and the quiet movements of warriors preparing for the day. She joined the others, carrying water, helping tend to fires, and assisting with small tasks that allowed her to blend in without drawing unnecessary attention. She watched the Comanche people closely. They were not the fearsome figures she had imagined from stories told in towns far away. They laughed with one another, shared meals, and cared for children. The elders passed down knowledge quietly, teaching skills and customs through example rather than harsh instruction. Eliza noticed how respect was earned through actions, patience, and courage, not through fear alone. This realization helped her feel a little less like a stranger and more like a visitor in a complex and ordered world. Among the warriors, one man stood apart. The young warrior who had first observed her during the capture remained near, though he never approached directly. Sometimes she caught his eyes watching, filled with quiet thoughtfulness rather than judgment. He seemed to notice when she struggled, subtly helping without drawing attention. Once, when she carried a heavy bucket of water across uneven ground, he positioned himself nearby so she wouldn't slip. A simple gesture, unnoticed by others, but it spoke volumes. Eliza began to anticipate danger and plan carefully for every step. She observed the movements of the warriors, memorized paths around the camp, and learned which areas were safe. She also began forming small connections with other captives and camp members. A child offered her a piece of bread one morning without expectation, and an older woman corrected her gently when she made mistakes while tending the fires. These small moments of kindness gave her courage and reminded her that even in a situation that felt impossible, humanity could be found. Life, however, was not simple. The camp existed in a delicate balance between safety and the ever-present threat of outsiders. Scouts returned with reports of soldiers moving across the plains, and tension spread quietly but steadily. The king held meetings with trusted warriors, discussing strategy and preparing for potential confrontation. While the captives were not involved, they could sense the camp's unease. Every sudden movement, every sharp sound in the distance reminded Eliza that her life depended on vigilance, discretion, and understanding the people around her. The young warrior became more involved in subtle ways. He would adjust tasks so she would not be placed in difficult or dangerous situations. When others noticed, he simply explained it as routine management. Over time, trust developed between them. Eliza learned to read his expressions, understanding warnings without words. In turn, the warrior began to see her not as a mere captive, but as someone capable, intelligent, and strong despite the fear in her eyes. This mutual understanding created a quiet bond, one built on observation and shared responsibility rather than words or promises. Eliza also began to see the nuances in the king's leadership. He was strict and unyielding when necessary, yet he cared for his people in ways that were subtle but clear to those who watched closely. He enforced rules to maintain order and survival, but he also showed moments of fairness and protection. Eliza realized that the world was not black and white. The people who frightened her were also human beings with families, fears, and responsibilities. One afternoon, as she helped gather food from the camp stores, she witnessed a disagreement between two warriors. Voices were raised, but the king approached calmly, listening to each side before giving instructions that were clear, just, and respected by both men. Eliza realized that power did not always require anger or violence. Sometimes, careful observation and decisive action commanded respect more effectively. The young warrior continued to watch her closely. He began to teach her small survival skills in ways that appeared ordinary to others. He showed her how to move quietly across the camp, how to avoid obstacles, and how to read subtle signs of danger. Each lesson was delivered as a casual observation rather than instruction, ensuring that the king would never suspect interference. Eliza absorbed these lessons quickly, recognizing the importance of each detail. Despite the growing familiarity, fear never left her completely. Nights were the hardest, when the wind howled across the plains, carrying unknown sounds and shadows. She would lie awake, listening to the distant noises and imagining what might be waiting beyond the camp. But in those moments she also reflected on small successes, carrying her duties well, navigating the camp safely, and gaining the respect of at least a few members of the tribe. Each day added to her confidence, even as danger remained a constant presence. Tension in the camp increased as scouts brought news of soldiers advancing from a distant settlement. The warriors prepared quietly, but efficiently. Weapons were inspected, families gathered supplies, and the camp was on alert. Eliza noticed the quiet changes in behavior, fewer jokes, more focused work, and a shared seriousness in the eyes of both warriors and elders. The air seemed heavier and the nights longer. The young warrior made it clear without words that she should remain cautious. He would occasionally guide her to safer tasks or ensure she was positioned away from potential threats. The small gestures reassured her and strengthened her trust in him. She realized that survival required not only physical skill but also the ability to understand and rely on others when necessary. During one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of red and purple, the young warrior spoke to her quietly. His words were simple and careful, translated through gestures and basic language. He warned her about areas to avoid and reminded her to stay close to the central camp. His tone was not commanding but protective, conveying concern without fear or judgment.
Eliza remembered his words long after he left.
She recognized that while many forces controlled her situation, this one warrior had chosen to look out for her, balancing loyalty to the king with his sense of right. His actions were subtle, but they mattered more than any words. She felt a quiet gratitude, and for the first time since the capture, a sense that she was not entirely alone. As days passed, Eliza's understanding of the camp grew deeper. She observed the rhythm of life, the patterns of movement, and the relationships between people. She learned to anticipate moods, notice subtle warnings, and respond in ways that kept her safe. Each moment of attention and care became part of her survival strategy. She also noticed the warrior watching her less openly now, indicating trust on both sides. At night the camp was quieter than during the day, but still full of life. Fires burned low, and the sounds of distant conversations mixed with the wind. Eliza would sit near a small fire, reflecting on what she had learned. She realized that strength was not just physical, it was patience, observation, courage, and understanding human nature. The bond forming between her and the warrior became a silent lifeline in a world that felt both threatening and strangely familiar. The tension of approaching soldiers continued to hang over the camp, reminding everyone that the days ahead would be filled with uncertainty. Eliza understood that her safety depended not only on careful observation, but also on courage, quick thinking, and trust in the small alliances she had begun to form. The young warrior had shown her that loyalty could take many forms, and even in a world of rules and power, acts of quiet courage could make a difference. By the end of this period, Eliza had settled into a fragile routine. She moved carefully through the camp, completed her tasks, and earned small measures of respect from those around her. She had learned to survive, to understand the people and their ways, and to build a quiet bond with the warrior who had begun to protect her. Though fear and uncertainty remained, a sense of resilience was growing within her. Each day was a small victory, each gesture a sign that she could navigate this new world, and that courage could be found even in the most difficult circumstances. The days continued to pass, each one blending into the next, yet Eliza noticed the subtle changes around her. The camp was no longer a strange, intimidating place. She had learned the rhythm of daily life, the quiet conversations of elders, the laughter of children playing near the fire, and the focused work of warriors preparing for challenges that could come at any moment. Even the king's presence, once terrifying, had become a part of the background, a constant reminder of authority, but also of order and protection.
Eliza had grown stronger, not just in body, but in mind.
She could carry heavy water buckets without stumbling, light fires for cooking, and help others with tasks that once seemed impossible. More importantly, she had learned how to move carefully through the camp without drawing unnecessary attention. She noticed things others missed, a shadow where danger might hide, a sudden silence signaling tension, or the way children's eyes shifted when someone approached. These small observations kept her safe, and she relied on them constantly. The young warrior remained a quiet presence nearby. He no longer watched her openly, but she could feel his attention. Sometimes she caught him helping other captives subtly, guiding them to safer areas or quietly instructing them on small tasks. Occasionally their eyes met, and in those moments she felt a shared understanding. He did not speak much, but through small gestures he showed that he was aware of her struggles and was quietly supporting her. One morning, scouts returned from the plains with news. Soldiers from a nearby settlement were moving closer, and the king called for a meeting with his senior warriors. The tension in the camp grew almost instantly. Everyone worked faster and with more caution, knowing that the calm routine they had relied on might be disrupted. Eliza observed quietly, aware that these preparations would affect her safety. She noticed the young warrior's subtle movements. He inspected paths, checked water supplies, and quietly ensured that captives were not left in dangerous areas. Eliza had begun to understand the importance of discretion. Every step she took, every word she spoke, could have consequences. She learned to speak only when necessary and to listen more than she talked. She watched the king and the warriors closely, noticing small cues, a slight nod, a hand gesture, or a glance. These signs communicated warnings and instructions without words, and she learned to interpret them. Despite the growing tension, she also noticed moments of humanity. Families cared for each other, warriors shared stories, and elders passed down knowledge to children in quiet, meaningful ways. These moments reminded her that even in a world shaped by survival and authority, kindness and respect could exist. She began to find comfort in these small interactions, gaining confidence that she could navigate the camp safely. The young warrior became more deliberate in his actions. He would guide her to safer tasks, occasionally offering tips on how to move quickly or quietly when necessary. He taught her how to avoid drawing attention, how to use her surroundings to stay safe, and how to anticipate danger before it appeared. Eliza listened carefully and applied his advice, growing more capable each day. She realized that while the world outside might be dangerous, she was learning skills that could protect her in ways she had never imagined. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills and the camp settled into the quiet of night, Eliza sat near the fire reflecting on the day. She remembered how the young warrior had silently moved to help a child carry water, and how he had guided another captive away from a potentially dangerous path. These small acts of care impressed her deeply, and she began to understand that his loyalty to the king did not prevent him from doing what he felt was right. The next day brought new challenges. Scouts returned with reports that the soldiers were closer than expected. The king called for another meeting, and preparations increased. Warriors tested their weapons, families packed supplies, and captives were instructed to remain close to the camp's center. Eliza followed instructions carefully, moving with purpose while observing everything around her. She noticed the young warrior ensuring that she remained out of harm's way, adjusting her tasks subtly to avoid exposure. Eliza's confidence continued to grow, but so did her awareness of danger. She realized that survival depended not only on physical strength but also on mental acuity. She had to anticipate movements, understand the intentions of those around her, and make decisions quickly. Each day offered lessons, and she applied them carefully, gaining a reputation among some of the warriors and captives as attentive and capable. One afternoon, as she helped carry supplies from the storage area, the young warrior approached quietly. He gestured toward a narrow path along the edge of the camp, indicating a safer route for her to follow. Though the action was subtle, Eliza understood. She thanked him silently with a nod and followed his guidance, realizing that small acts of support could be life-saving in the right moment. The bond between them grew, built on shared observation and quiet trust. They did not speak often, but their understanding was deep. Eliza had learned to read his expressions, recognizing warnings, instructions, and reassurances. In turn, the warrior had learned that she was capable, careful, and courageous despite her fear. Their connection was a lifeline in a world filled with uncertainty. As days passed, the camp's atmosphere shifted. The soldiers approached, and tension became almost tangible. Warriors moved with purpose, children stayed close to their families, and elders watched over everyone carefully. Eliza noticed the patterns of preparation, understanding that every movement had meaning. She learned to anticipate the needs of the camp, to position herself safely, and to assist in ways that would not draw attention. Despite the pressure, moments of calm remained. Fires burned low at night, and the camp shared quiet meals together. Eliza found comfort in these routines, gaining a sense of stability in an otherwise unpredictable world. She reflected on her journey, the capture, and the lessons she had learned. Each day brought new understanding, and she grew more resilient with every challenge. The young warrior continued to guide her, often with small, almost invisible gestures. He adjusted her tasks, shared tips, and watched for potential dangers. Eliza recognized that his loyalty to the king was balanced by a personal sense of right and wrong. His actions were deliberate, showing careful judgment and quiet courage. One evening, as darkness fell and the camp settled into quiet, the young warrior spoke softly to her. Using gestures and simple words, he reminded her to remain close to the center of the camp and to avoid wandering near the edges. His tone was calm but firm, conveying care and concern. Eliza felt a surge of gratitude and trust, recognizing that her survival depended not only on her own abilities, but also on the support of someone who understood the dangers she faced. As the night progressed, Eliza observed the camp in new ways. She noticed the warriors' subtle shifts in posture, the elders' careful glances, and the children's playful movements. She began to understand the camp as a living system, where every action had meaning and every observation could provide safety. She realized that knowledge, attention, and understanding could be as powerful as strength or skill. The days that followed were filled with preparation, observation, and quiet learning. Eliza applied every lesson she had learned, moving carefully, completing tasks efficiently, and maintaining a low profile. She earned the respect of some members of the camp while remaining alert to potential dangers. Her confidence grew, as did her understanding of the young warrior's guidance and protection. At night, as she lay near the fire, she reflected on the path that had brought her here. The journey had been long and frightening, but she had survived through courage, observation, and careful learning. She understood that the days ahead would bring even greater challenges, but she felt prepared in ways she had never imagined. The bond between Eliza and the young warrior remained unspoken but strong. Their trust was quiet, built on observation, gestures, and shared understanding. Each act of protection, each subtle warning strengthened the connection between them. They both knew that the future held uncertainty, but together, they had created a small lifeline in a world filled with danger. By the end of this period, Eliza had grown more capable, more aware, and more resilient. She understood the complexities of the camp, the nuances of human behavior, and the importance of quiet courage. The young warrior's guidance had been invaluable, teaching her not only how to survive but also how to observe, interpret, and respond. Each day had strengthened her, preparing her for challenges yet to come, and building a bond that would prove essential in the trials that lay ahead. The days grew heavier as the soldiers drew closer, their presence felt in the whispers of scouts returning to the camp. The air was tense, and every movement seemed sharper, every glance more cautious. The camp was alive with preparation, yet beneath the busy activity a quiet fear lingered. Eliza noticed how the warriors moved with purpose, checking weapons, reinforcing shelters, and ensuring families were ready for anything. Children stayed close to their parents, and elders spoke in low voices, reminding everyone of the need for patience and caution. Every detail mattered now, and Eliza had learned to observe closely. The young warrior remained near, though still careful not to attract attention. He adjusted her tasks subtly, moving her away from areas where danger could appear. He taught her how to move with the camp's rhythm, to blend in with the flow of people, and to notice patterns that might signal trouble. Eliza followed his guidance, realizing that her survival depended as much on observation and understanding as on physical ability. She began to anticipate movements before they happened, noticing how warriors shifted positions, how fires were managed, and how subtle signals could communicate warnings without words. One morning, scouts returned with urgent news. The soldiers were moving faster than expected, and there was a chance they could reach the outskirts of the camp within a day. The king called a meeting with his senior warriors, and the air grew tense. Every member of the camp knew that preparation was critical. Eliza worked silently, completing her tasks with efficiency and care, aware that every action could affect the safety of those around her. The young warrior observed her carefully, ensuring she remained out of harm's way. At one point, he gestured for her to follow a different path through the camp, one that kept her near the center and away from areas where potential conflict might occur.
Eliza obeyed without hesitation, grateful for his guidance.
Though he said very little, the unspoken bond between them had grown strong. Each understood that the other's safety was important, and that trust could mean the difference between danger and survival. As the day progressed, the camp prepared for the possibility of confrontation. Warriors moved silently, their steps careful, their actions deliberate. Families gathered supplies, securing belongings and making plans for temporary relocation if needed. Eliza observed all of this, understanding the importance of each movement. She had grown adept at reading the signs of tension, noticing how a slight shift in posture or a careful glance could indicate a problem before it appeared. The young warrior continued to support her quietly. He showed her how to carry water and supplies more efficiently, how to move quickly without drawing attention, and how to watch for signals that indicated the presence of outsiders. Each lesson was small but critical, and Eliza absorbed every detail. She realized that preparation and foresight were as vital as courage in moments of uncertainty. Late that afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind distant hills, a scout returned with news that the soldiers were approaching faster than anyone had expected. The camp immediately shifted into higher alert. Warriors checked weapons, families huddled together, and elders moved carefully through the camp, ensuring that everyone was accounted for.
Eliza noticed how tension affected even small routines. Conversations were quieter, tasks were completed more quickly, and movements became sharper and more precise.
Amid this growing pressure, the young warrior guided Eliza through a series of tasks that kept her safe while allowing her to help the camp. She carried water to families who were busy packing, assisted elders with small chores, and remained vigilant for any signs of threat. Through it all, she maintained a calm focus, understanding that fear would only make mistakes more likely. As evening fell, the camp prepared for the night with a heightened sense of awareness. Fires were lit in specific locations to provide warmth and light without drawing attention from outside. Children were kept close to their families, and adults moved silently, communicating with gestures and subtle signals. Eliza found herself noticing details she had never seen before: the way a warrior's hand rested on a weapon, the direction of a glance, or the small shifts in posture that indicated readiness. The young warrior remained nearby, offering quiet guidance and reassurance without speaking loudly. At one point, he motioned for her to move behind a group of elders, positioning her safely while allowing her to continue helping with tasks. Eliza followed without hesitation, understanding that these small actions could make a significant difference. Their trust had grown to a point where words were unnecessary. Each understood the other's intentions clearly. Night fell, and the camp settled into a tense but controlled routine. Guards took their positions, fires burned steadily, and the sounds of distant animals mixed with the quiet whispers of people moving carefully through the camp. Eliza sat near the fire, reflecting on the day and the lessons she had learned. She realized that survival depended not only on physical skill but also on awareness, patience, and understanding the intentions of those around her. The young warrior approached quietly, his presence comforting despite the tension in the air. He gestured toward a safer path for her to follow, one that would allow her to move between areas of the camp without exposure to potential danger. She nodded silently, grateful for his guidance, and followed the path carefully, observing the patterns of movement and learning how to blend seamlessly with the camp's rhythm. Over the next several hours, the camp remained on alert. Scouts reported that the soldiers were still advancing, though their exact position was unknown. Every member of the camp remained vigilant, understanding that the approaching threat could arrive at any moment. Eliza continued her tasks with precision, moving efficiently, observing carefully, and maintaining a low profile. Through it all, the young warrior remained a quiet anchor. He continued to provide guidance, teaching her how to read subtle cues, anticipate movements, and respond without drawing attention. His actions were deliberate and thoughtful, showing that loyalty could be balanced with personal judgment. Eliza came to rely on his support, understanding that their partnership, though unspoken, was a source of safety and strength. As the night deepened, Eliza found herself reflecting on how much she had grown since her capture. She had learned to navigate the camp, understand the people, and anticipate danger. She had built a quiet bond with the young warrior, one based on trust and observation rather than words. She recognized that the days ahead would be filled with even greater challenges, but she felt prepared in ways she had never imagined. The camp remained tense, but order was maintained. Fires burned steadily, children were kept safe, and warriors moved with precision. Every action had meaning, Every gesture was important, and every member of the camp played a role in ensuring safety. Eliza understood this now, and she moved through the camp with confidence, aware of the responsibility she carried and the lessons she had learned. As dawn approached, the camp prepared for another day of uncertainty. Scouts were sent out, warriors checked their positions, and families readied themselves for possible movement. Eliza observed carefully, anticipating the changes that might come and preparing herself for the challenges ahead. The bond between her and the young warrior remained strong, built on trust, observation, and shared understanding. She had learned to navigate a complex world, to anticipate threats, and to rely on both her own skills and the guidance of those she trusted. The approaching soldiers represented a new challenge, but she felt ready to face it with courage, patience, and careful planning. By the end of this period, Eliza had become an essential part of the camp's routine. Her awareness, skill, and careful observation earned her quiet respect from some members of the tribe, while her growing bond with the young warrior provided both safety and guidance. The challenges ahead would test her further, but she was prepared to face them, understanding that survival depended not only on courage but also on intelligence, patience, and trust. The first light of dawn broke across the plains, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The camp was quieter than usual, each person moving with a careful sense of purpose. Scouts had returned during the night with news that the soldiers were closer than ever, and the tension in the air was thick. Warriors checked their weapons, families gathered belongings, and elders moved steadily through the camp, ensuring that everyone understood the importance of vigilance. Every detail mattered now, and Eliza had learned to pay close attention to the smallest signs of danger. Eliza rose early and moved through the camp with quiet precision. She carried water, helped prepare meals, and assisted where needed, all while remaining aware of the subtle shifts around her. She noticed the warrior's eyes flicking toward the horizon, the careful movements of elders guiding children, and the small but critical adjustments made to the camp's layout. Each observation helped her understand not only the immediate risks but also the larger picture of life in the camp. The young warrior was close by, moving with a quiet confidence that gave her reassurance. He had continued his subtle guidance, ensuring she remained safe while also preparing her for moments when decisions might need to be made quickly. At one point he motioned for her to follow a slightly different path through the camp, avoiding an area where scouts had reported movement the previous night. Eliza followed without question, trusting his judgment completely. As the morning passed, the camp shifted into a state of alert. Warriors positioned themselves near strategic points. Fires were lit in careful locations to provide warmth without drawing attention, and families huddled together, prepared to move at a moment's notice. Eliza observed everything, understanding that her actions could contribute to her own safety as well as the safety of others. She moved with purpose, helping wherever she could, and remaining ready to respond to any sudden changes. Suddenly, scouts returned with urgent news. The soldiers were visible on the horizon, approaching faster than expected. The king called for a meeting with his senior warriors, giving clear instructions for how to respond. The camp's energy shifted immediately. Preparation became more intense, and every member knew that the moment of danger was near. Eliza continued her tasks, aware that any misstep could have consequences. She felt a mixture of fear and determination, understanding that this could be the moment that tested everything she had learned. The young warrior approached her quietly, giving a subtle gesture for her to follow him to a safer area. He moved with calm precision, ensuring that she would be out of immediate danger while still allowing her to contribute to the camp's preparations.
Eliza followed, feeling a sense of trust that went beyond words.
In the midst of chaos, their quiet understanding became a lifeline, guiding her through moments when fear could easily take hold. As the soldiers drew closer, the first signs of conflict appeared. Distant shouts echoed across the plains, and the ground seemed to tremble under the weight of approaching hooves. Warriors moved swiftly to strategic points, positioning themselves to defend the camp and protect families. Eliza observed carefully, noticing every shift in movement, every subtle signal that indicated the readiness of the warriors. She understood that awareness could be just as important as courage in the moments ahead. The young warrior remained near, his presence a steady anchor in the growing storm of tension. He continued to guide her through small but critical adjustments, moving her to safer positions, instructing her on how to respond quickly, and ensuring that she remained calm despite the mounting fear. Each gesture reinforced their unspoken bond, built on trust, observation, and mutual understanding. Suddenly, a small group of scouts appeared at the edge of the camp, reporting that the soldiers were within striking distance. The king acted decisively, giving instructions to move families and captives to more secure areas, while warriors prepared to intercept any threat. Eliza moved with precision, helping to guide children and elders to safety, while keeping herself close to the young warrior. Together, they navigated the camp with careful coordination, responding to every signal and instruction with awareness and calm. As the soldiers arrived, a tense standoff unfolded on the horizon. The camp remained organized, every action deliberate, every movement purposeful. Eliza watched, her heart pounding, as the warriors positioned themselves to defend the camp. She observed how the king maintained authority while balancing the safety of his people, understanding that leadership was as much about strategy and wisdom as it was about courage. The young warrior guided her through the chaos, keeping her close and ensuring that she remained protected. At one point, he placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture of reassurance, before moving to intercept a small group of soldiers approaching from the side. Eliza understood that he was risking himself to ensure her safety, and a mixture of gratitude and determination filled her. She knew that courage alone would not be enough. She needed to remain alert, thoughtful, and quick to respond. The conflict escalated briefly, with shouts and the sounds of movement filling the air. The warriors maintained order, intercepting the soldiers without unnecessary risk to the families or captives. Eliza observed how small adjustments and careful strategy allowed the camp to remain safe despite the threat. She realized that preparation, observation, and trust were just as important as physical strength in moments of danger. Once the immediate threat was resolved, the king gathered his people to assess the situation. Scouts reported that the soldiers had withdrawn, moving back across the plains. The camp breathed a quiet sigh of relief, though everyone knew that vigilance was still necessary. Eliza reflected on the events, understanding that the danger had tested not only the warrior's skill, but also her own growth and ability to navigate uncertainty. The young warrior approached her once more, this time offering a quiet nod of acknowledgement. Though words were few, the gesture carried deep meaning. He had guided her, protected her, and trusted her to remain alert and capable. Eliza felt a surge of pride and gratitude, recognizing that their bond had grown stronger through shared experience and quiet understanding. In the following days, the camp returned to a cautious routine. Preparations continued, but there was a sense of relief that they had overcome the immediate danger. Eliza continued her tasks with precision, blending seamlessly with the movements of the camp. She had learned to read the signs of tension, anticipate potential risks, and respond quickly to changing circumstances. Her awareness and careful actions earned her quiet respect from some members of the tribe, while her bond with the young warrior remained a source of guidance and reassurance. As the sun set over the plains, Eliza sat near the fire, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. She thought of the long days of travel, the fear of capture, the lessons learned in the camp, and the quiet strength that had grown within her. She understood that survival depended not only on courage and skill but also on observation, patience, and trust. The young warrior's guidance had been invaluable, teaching her that quiet acts of support and careful preparation could mean the difference between safety and danger. In the evening, the king addressed the camp. His voice carried authority but also a sense of respect for the people under his care. He acknowledged the efforts of the warriors, families, and captives, emphasizing the importance of vigilance, cooperation, and courage. Eliza listened carefully, understanding that leadership was a balance of strategy, wisdom, and care for others. The young warrior remained near her, his presence a reminder of the bond they had formed through shared experience. Though the future remained uncertain, Eliza felt prepared to face it. She had learned to navigate a complex world, to observe and interpret the actions of others, and to respond thoughtfully to every situation. Her courage, awareness, and careful planning had grown stronger each day, allowing her to face challenges with confidence and composure. By the end of this period, the camp had settled into a cautious peace. The soldiers had retreated, and the immediate danger had passed, but the lessons learned remained. Eliza had grown more capable, more aware, and more resilient. She had built trust with the young warrior, learned to navigate the camp's complex routines, and developed the skills necessary to remain safe in an uncertain world. As the night deepened and fires burned low, Eliza looked toward the horizon. She understood that the journey ahead would continue to bring challenges, but she felt a quiet strength and determination within herself. She knew that courage, observation, and trust could guide her through whatever lay ahead. In the quiet of the camp, surrounded by people who had become both teachers and companions, she felt a sense of hope and readiness for the future, knowing that her resilience and careful preparation would carry her forward.